things will probably get a lot more serious. Our borders have been open. Trump is a Zionist, and the Zionists clearly are destroying the United States. I would not doubt if the IDF or somebody puts a missile into one of our aircraft carriers. I wouldn't doubt it. They did it to the USS Liberty, right? People say, that's insane. You can't say that. You're anti-Semite. I'm like, I don't know. Zionist isn't Semite. Israel does this stuff. That's like morning breakfast for them to do false flags, right? This is normal business for them.
All right, welcome everyone. Mike Adams here, joined by Michael Yon. Of course, we're talking about the breakout of the new war in the Middle East. Welcome, Michael. It's always an honor to have you on.
Oh, Michael, thanks for having me on. We're in Bangkok now. You know, Masako and I just spent 3 months in Europe. We were in Netherlands and Germany and Sweden and Norway and Denmark. And when we just left Denmark, we were in Denmark looking at the Danish Straits. So we were over there looking at the war issues. We were obviously not on vacation. In fact, we stayed for more than a month with Catherine Austin Fitz. And so, amazing. It was really amazing. I saw, in fact, a bunch of people sent me her Tucker interview yesterday where she was talking about going to the stallion horses together. It was pretty funny. Anyway, but so anyway, Masako and I, we had been doing quite a few interesting things. People were flying in from different countries to come see us, like Japan and whatnot. And anyway, so we ended up at the Danish Straits in Denmark, right? Because that's directly related to Panama and other routes and resources issues. Because, you know, the Danish Straits is as important to parts of Europe as Panama Canal is to the United States. It's extremely important, right? Yeah. And nearby things as well, like the Kiel Canal and that sort of thing. Anyway, so this thing started to kick up, and with the war on Iran, and as you know, we've been all talking about that for a long time. And Masako and I finally said, well, it's time to punch out of here because we might get stuck in Europe, and because we want to get back to Asia. And so we started plotting our routes back, and didn't even look at Qatar Air or Emirates, even though I love those airlines. But we actually took Turkish Air because, we had to make a connection to get back. And so we took Turkish Air, and we landed in Turkey. And we saw the IOM there loading up people to get on a flight to Vancouver. A bunch of appeared to be Middle Easterners or maybe somebody from parts of Asia. But anyway, there was a mixed group actually. And so we saw the invasion still going in with IOM that we've talked about so many times, International Organization for Migration. Yeah. And then we finally landed in Bangkok for some meetings. So we're here back in Bangkok. As you know, I used to have an office in Chiang Mai in Thailand. So I'm very familiar with this place. But we wanted to be on this side of the war before anything kicked off because we didn't want to get stuck. And so that looks like what's happened. We got here just in time, actually. And the flights have started. Some of the flights have been obviously halted going through the Middle East. Anyway, The shooting has begun, as you well know.
All right. So let me just set the context here for our audience. So you and I are talking sort of afternoon time, Central Time, USA time on Saturday. But this won't run until probably Sunday morning. So a lot can happen after we end up talking here. Obviously, this is a rapidly escalating situation. But talk to us about what we know right now. I mean, a major U.S. radar installation destroyed. And then, of course, you've been the voice warning about the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, which appears to have taken place. But you have a different take on what may be happening there. So where do you want to begin on all this?
Right. It actually is Sunday morning here in Thailand. So I'm slightly ahead. And but I've been to that Bahrain headquarters. In fact, I flew in Secretary of Defense Robert Gates picked me up in Afghanistan, and we flew various places together. And one of the places we flew to was that headquarters in Bahrain, 5th Fleet headquarters. 5th Fleet is the naval fleet that covers that area of the world and Africa and that sort of thing. So that's so I was actually in that headquarters. Very interesting. Got a briefing from the admiral there at the time, Admiral Gortney. It's fascinating stuff. But at the end of the day, you saw that drone that allegedly hit. I mean, it looked like it was a real slow drone, and it hit that radar. If that's a legit video, imagine how weak our defenses are. That a drone that's coming in that flies about the speed of a a messenger pigeon, you know what I mean? And it's one of our radars, and it's in slow motion. I mean, if it's legit, and it probably is in that particular case. But as you know, this is a war, so there's everything subject to being a lie and just wrong. But what we can see is the war has clearly begun, and since the beginning, I've been saying I think that the Strait of Hormuz will be closed. And I have told Japanese, like a Japanese team just flew in from Japan to meet us in Norway and Denmark. And I told them to tell all of their people back in Japan, if the Strait of Hormuz closed, everybody in Japan should be buying food right now, right? So right now, if you're in Japan, buy food. That's what I would do. And I would prepare yourself, because we don't know how long this will be closed. And this can affect not just Japan, but it can affect all of your partners. So even if it's not you directly, it can indirectly affect Japan imports a lot of food. In any case, this can obviously spread. I'm looking at places like Gwadar and Chabahar ports and all there's so many things that could happen here, the Strait of Malacca and whatnot. So, but at the end of the day, the Strait of Hormuz. Why would Iran close the Strait of Hormuz? That's like, the United States, or let's say Zionist forces, which is more accurate, obviously destroyed Nord Stream. Misako and I got that right way in advance. You and I have talked about it numerous times.
Yes.
We went to Germany and reported on it way in advance, and multiple times, many times. And finally, we were there in Germany 14 days before Nord Stream was destroyed. We were there specifically warning about Nord Stream. We were at the BASF plant in Ludwigshafen, Germany. Boom, it happened, right? So why are we getting so many of these things like screwworms right? Because we know the main oligarchical structures that are fighting, and we know what their main goals are. For instance, causing global famine is one of those with the Zionist forces. The Zionist forces are the ones that push the death jab, right? So those are the ones who actually push that's them. I mean, the ones who, when you see Americans dying all over the place and Japanese dying all over the place from the jab, that's them. They're attacking us as much as they're attacking Iran, and they're using us to attack Iran. I mean, this is a beautiful dark art. And so now, who would close the Strait of Hormuz? Why would Iran close it? That would be like saying Russia would blow up Nord Stream. When Zionist forces destroyed Nord Stream, keep in mind, U.S. presidents had bragged about, we're going to shut Nord Stream, right? There were multiple people bragging about it. It was obvious it would probably happen, and then it happened, and then immediately they blamed Russia, and people believed them. Even Germans. Almost every German I spoke with thought Russia did it. I'm like, why would Russia cut their own throat? It was clearly, anyway, at the end of the day, Zionist forces did it. We all know that. They've admitted to it. Either that or space aliens. But, then it can't, and same with the Strait of Hormuz. Why would Iran close the Strait of Hormuz? They have no reason to do it. They have reasons to close it to Zionist forces ships, military action, of course. They have reason to close it to trade that's going to nations that are fighting against Iran, but Iran has zero interest in closing the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, that's in fact, China will not like that at all. Japan's not going to like it. Many, many countries, including all the Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain, Qatar, of course, Kuwait, Iraq.
I understand
they're
that.
all going to be affected.
Okay, but hold on. A couple of things, and I want you to answer these to your, whatever. It's okay. You don't have to agree with me, but it seems like there's a rumor that there's been an attack on a Saudi oil field by Iran. There's clearly been an attack on the Fifth Fleet headquarters. People are getting hit in Bahrain, UAE. Other Arab states in the region are getting hit by Iran. It seems to me that Iran no longer cares about pissing off its neighbors there with the closure of Hormuz. What would you say to that?
No, that's accurate. Good shot. I mean, that's important. I mean, what you're saying there is important. So it could be in their best interest to close it off in that, to close off their energy, right? Now, keep in mind, Houthis have shot quite a lot at Kingdom of Saudi Arabia before. They've had a lot of shooting going. This is a complex region, as you know. And so in that regard, yes, they could have a reason to want to shut the Strait of Hormuz. But again, China, China needs that energy coming out of of there, as do Japan and many others, right? So there's reasons to want to keep it open. Russia would want to keep it open as well. Now, let's see how it plays out. Yeah, let's see how it plays out.
China needs that strait to function, but China has also stockpiled a massive supply of oil for 2 years, So they could actually make it through this much better than Europe, let's say.
Right. Well, let's see how it plays out. You know how these things go. Wars are unpredictable, and they grow. Right. And keep in mind that the North-South corridor. And by the way, Pepe Escobar came out with a great video the other day. I saw Larry Johnson, the retired CIA analyst. He'd sent this video. He sent me this. And anyway, his friend Pepe Escobar went over to Iran and did a video describing the North-South corridor, which is something I've been talking about for a long time. This is about, listen, Iran for that part of the world is as important as the Panama Canal is for the United States. It's super important. Iran is a crossroads for the North-South corridor, for the infrastructure they're building up around Chabahar port and these sorts of things. So I mean, this is Iran is the nexus. It always has been. We have a book in our home library in Japan from the 1700s, where a British man and an English man actually is doing a reconnaissance through the Caspian Sea to work these routes and work out the routes and resources there. It's a fascinating book talking about nothing has changed except that now that there's a larger population everywhere, and the routes and resources are more and more valuable. So opening up these brick routes all through Asia and into Europe, that's what this fight is really about. It's not about Iran wants to kill all the Jews in the world. That's actually nonsense. Jews live in Iran, right? There's Jews. I mean, why would they not kill them? So you know what I mean? A lot of these things don't make sense on the face of it. Now, keep in mind, the Zionists obviously are a cult. A lot of Jews and Zionists absolutely hate each other's guts. Most Zionists are actually Christians. So this is, but the Zionists always conflate Zionism with Judaism as top cover, right? They always, say, oh, you can't come after me. That's anti-Semite. The white guys from Europe throwing the anti-Semite card.
Right.
So anyway, but at the end of the day, the Zionist cult is trying to rule the world. And part of that is depopulation, for instance, through death jabs, right? And for instance, controlling the Panama. I've said many times, including with you, Michael, that what you see going on in Panama is not so much between United States and China as between Zionists and China. Same down in Argentina. When we went to the CPAC thing down in Buenos Aires in about roughly December of 2024, maybe November, they started the CPAC. That's the big Republican convention that they have all over the world. They started off with Viva Argentina, Viva Estados Unidos, and Viva Israel. This is in Buenos Aires, right? Keep in mind, Buenos Aires is one of the biggest actual Jewish cities in the world, right? It's a huge Argentina in general, but Buenos Aires specifically. It's a fight down there between the Chinese and the Zionists, just like it is in Panama, right? Yeah. Now, when I say this, a lot of people, they either roll their eyes or they just have no frame of reference, or they'll throw the anti-Semite card because that's all they got. And it's like, but at the end of the day, if you're going to be accurate in your predictions, you have to figure out what's the truth regardless, right? And the truth is those are the main systems fighting each other, and the United States has been captured. Look at in Texas. You see Abbott was just endorsed by Trump again against our friend Pete Chambers, right? And Don Huffines, as you know, who ran for governor before, Don Huffines, his family bought that Epstein ranch over in New Mexico. Trump just endorsed Huffines for a comptroller, right? Huffines had contacted me when he was running for governor in Texas. He and his son had contacted me because they were trying to, gin up support for Texas. And I looked into him and I just didn't feel right about it. And now I understand why I didn't feel right about it. He bought the Epstein ranch. I had no idea about that stuff at the time. It just didn't feel right. But look at this. Trump is Zionist. He's openly Zionist. He works for Zionists. And remember, Israel is not Zionist. Israel is an aircraft carrier for Zionists. That's their home base. That's their strong point, but they're actually global, right? And there's many groups that are global, like the Catholic Church, right? There's many. So, but they're not the only one. But the point is that's who's fighting right now. They're fighting over routes, resources, and ideology. Wars are always about three things: routes, resources, and ideology. And ideology is about human resources. They are going for, that's why we were just in Denmark at the we were at the Danish Strait, because we were there because we can clearly see that eventually will shape up to a fight as well. I'm telling you things right now that will be in the news maybe in a couple of years or so, right? Like Panama Canal or Darien Gap, things that will be in the news later. Remember Danish Straits. Remember Denmark. It's not all about Greenland, right? There's a lot more going on. If we switch back to Panama again, these are all directly related. Maersk, the biggest, is a huge shipping company, right? Maersk obviously took that railway down in Panama. Maersk is Danish. I call it Denmark because, Maersk basically owns Denmark. So I call it Denmark, right? So, Denmark, they don't have much industry there except for making like pharmaceuticals like Ozempic and that sort of thing, and shipping, right? And global logistics. They are the ones that are fighting BlackRock down in Panama for those two ports on either side and the railway, right? This is why, again, we were just in Denmark, because this is directly related to Panama. It's directly related to what's going on in Iran. It's directly related to it's a global routes and resources war, right? And so to understand what's happening and why Nord Stream was cut, which is very close to Denmark, and all these different things, why we spend so much time in Netherlands, it's all part of the big board, you might say. And when you're trying to let me bring up one thing, by the way, on the Iran thing. People keep hitting me with, oh, what about those 30 some odd thousand people that they just killed in the protest? Where's your evidence of that? Trump has said 32,000 were killed in the Iranian protest. How do you kill 32,000 people that quickly with small arms, right? Are they dropping, fuel air bombs over Tehran, over their own people? No, they're not. And Trump also said...
It's clear. Let me just interrupt. Those numbers are just completely fabricated by the U.S. State Department and Trump and Rubio, and just repeated by J.D. Vance and others. It's just typical lies from the Epstein administration. So we all know that. But before you... I'm sorry to interrupt, Michael, but before you keep going here, we got to talk about the fact that Yemen has announced they're closing the Red Sea. Nobody's going to be able to go through the Suez also. So now we're talking about Hormuz and Suez both closed at the same time. Talk to us about what that's going to do to global supply chains.
Oh, this is a big one. And let me finish that on the 32,000, okay, sure. Because Trump was also saying 38,000 Americans were killed building the Panama Canal. 38,000 Panama Canal, which is an abject lie. I've got the original reports to Congress, with the yellow pages and all that stuff, right? And so it was like roughly 350, right? Versus 38,000 Americans, right? Why did he have to lie? I mean, there's enough reasons to guard the canal without lying. And then he's saying 32,000 in Iran. Anyway, now let's go back to the Yemen and the Houthis and whatnot. This is very important. Directly related to Minnesota. How does that happen? You see what was just happening in Minnesota, Somaliland, right? So for those who have maps in front of them, or unless you have maps in your head like I do, Somaliland, if you look where Somaliland is, not Somalia, but Somaliland, right next to Djibouti, right? Right there, across the water from Yemen, right? That has been a Zionist dream since the 1800s to take Somaliland and make that a homeland for the Jews. Actually, it's about control over that sea route right there, the Bab el-Mandeb, which goes right by Djibouti, of course, and then you go through, and then the next thing you know, you're at the Suez Canal, right? So anyway, Somaliland. Somaliland is a place where HIAS operates. We all know who HIAS is, the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, and they take Somalis directly from there. Keep in mind, what's happening in Somaliland, Israel is the only country that's recognized it. It happened about a month ago that recognized and said Somaliland is its own country. If you look where that's at, right, it's lining up for this war right here and to seize control of the Bab el-Mandeb, right? Now, if you look at HIAS was taking people from Somaliland and putting them in Minnesota, right? Because remember, they take people from places that are targeted and put them to places that are targeted. There's poetry in motion here. They don't waste action, right? If they're taking people from a part of Bangladesh, it's because they're doing something in that part of Bangladesh, right? But they were taking people from Somaliland and putting them in Minnesota, where you'll see, if you look online and just web search HIAS Minnesota, you'll see HIAS that's directly involved in these protests, directly involved in installing people in office. It's right there in the open. They don't hide it. I mean, it's in news articles. It's in their press releases. Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, the same people that are down in Panama pulling people through the Darien Gap, that is the same people that took people from Somalia and put them in Minnesota. Why Minnesota? Minnesota, routes and resources, headwater of the Mississippi River, right there on Lake Superior, right? Lake Superior, you can access from Minnesota and take a ship and go all the way to Hamburg, Germany. You can take a ship from Minnesota and go anywhere in the world. I mean, that's connected to the Atlantic Ocean, right? It goes through the Great Lakes and all those locks. How many locks is it? 60 something? And I think it was like 67 or I can't remember. But there's a lot of locks. You go through all these locks. Next thing you know, you're out on a salty ship and you're in Hamburg or someplace, right? So, I mean, what I'm getting to is the railways and whatnot that go through Minnesota. That's what this is about. So they're taking people out of a place they want to depopulate because they want to take it, Somaliland, and they're putting them into a place that they want to take. They want to depopulate that from Americans like us, right? So that's what this is about. Who's doing that? Zionists, straight up, hardcore, right in the open. It's not hidden at all. It's they're doing it in plain view. And the moment you notice it, of course, we know what they do then. They threaten to sue you, or they do sue you, or whatever, right?
Right. Okay. Wow. So this is, of course, an expansive global strategic control over routes and resources, and especially waterways. Which you have spoken about for many, many years. You've been right about it again and again. You know, it's almost like what's happening today is exactly what you laid out 3 years ago, sometimes in our interviews. But I want you to talk about the more immediate impacts right now of what happens if the Strait of Hormuz stays closed for 30 days and if the Suez stays closed for 30 days. Just what happens?
Well, your readership is global. I've said many times, whatever country I go to, people come up and say, I saw you on Mike Adams' show. So wherever you're at, for instance, Japanese listeners, of which there are a lot, you know at this point, you need to stock up on food. And if it turns out to be not a big deal, good. Eat the food and it'll be done. But at a minimum, the prices probably will substantially go up at a minimum. If this is closed for 30 days or 60 days or keeps going on, this could be very significant, because it could affect, that will immediately affect energy prices, obviously. And energy prices, as you've talked about many times, Michael, all boats of prices rise on energy prices. Whether, everything, if the energy prices are higher, everything's higher. And so this, at a minimum, your food prices are going to be higher. At a maximum, if this goes on, it will clearly spread because that's what wars do. That's like a rule of war, right? I mean, right. A rule of war prediction is that they spread unpredictably and they last longer than people expect. This has all the components of World War III. All the components are there at the table, right? The big players, Russia, China, United States, and India, all of the big players, Europe as a collective, everybody's interested in this.
Yeah, well, okay, so how are U.S. consumers going to feel this? I mean, obviously higher gas prices and higher transportation prices, so food inflation. But also, specifically, I want to ask you about supply chains getting completely wrecked here. I mean, the shutdown of U.S. domestic manufacturers because they can't get parts, things like that. Talk to us about some of those ramifications.
Right. And I think by now, most people have heard stories or lived stories where you couldn't get parts for your broken car. Yep. And Vandersteel was telling me something the other day about that. I mean, some tire problem. It just takes forever to get tiny parts. When I used to live in Poland, I used to have an office there. I actually hired somebody who did nothing but get parts and things like that made for me for my business. You know what I mean? When something broke, we had to go get stuff made, right? Old school. I mean, a lot of Americans are going to have to start thinking about that now. You're going to have to know people that has has machining gear and that sort of thing. But that's not the way to run a huge economy. This keep in mind, whereas things may not affect you directly, or they may, they'll affect you indirectly. If you're in the export business and your target country is being devastated economically, well, there goes your business. Or if you're importing from them, there goes your business, right? So we're all interconnected. It's nothing new, except that now it's interconnected more vibrantly than before. And keep in mind, as these choke points get choked down, like Strait of Hormuz, like Bab el-Mandeb, then that puts more pressure on the open choke points like Strait of Malacca, right? That puts more. That's why we're in Thailand. This is directly related to that. This is again, a lot of people look at Thailand as just a nice place to go on the beaches and whatnot. No, the reason I had an office in Chiang Mai, Thailand, is because this is the hyphen in Indo-Pacific security. This is a very important place, right? Singapore is very important, right there on the Strait of Malacca, right? And so you see the conflict between Cambodia and Thailand. That's not about that temple, that 1907 map. That is about routes and resources. Anyway, at the end of the day, how will this affect people in general? I would definitely stock up on food at this point, if for nothing else, because it's cheaper now than it will be in a month. Almost certainly the prices are going to go up. It's actually hard to imagine that food prices won't go up at this point. So just stock up for a matter of common sort of home economics.
Well, along those lines, let me plug my store since you brought it up, healthrangerstore.com. We are fully stocked right now with our Ranger buckets and storable foods and the number 10 cans with organic, lab-tested, freeze-dried items, fruits and vegetables, plus our meal kits, all organic, all lab-tested. We've got it right now, but I would imagine that starting immediately, we're going to get wiped out. You've been through our warehouse. You see, we've got, I don't know,
huge.
50 or 60. Yeah, it's a pretty big warehouse, but it's not unlimited. And, we can't even serve a fraction of 1% of the population if they try to get our food. So I agree with what you said. I mean, it's good to stock up, and things can change overnight. And then we won't be able to get a lot of supplies because, we buy turmeric from India, or we buy cacao from various countries. It just depends on the product. This stuff comes from all over the world. If those routes are getting shut down, this is way worse than the tariffs. Those were already bad. But now we're talking about physically being unable to get supplies, period. That's what's happening.
You're right. Right. And, speaking of shut down, I mentioned the gold, right? We were out looking at gold stores yesterday because there's signal flowing through that gold and silver, right? And Thailand is got their own gold standard, actually. It's called the baht. And I don't mean the Thai baht, the currency. I mean, it's the baht weight of gold. And they're 23 karat gold, not 24. Anyway, it's very smart that Thailand has their own system. It's a whole different story, but it's fascinating. It's a super smart way the Thais do it. Anyway, we were out looking at these gold stores in Chinatown. And went to quite a few. We're looking at them, like, how's business going? Because we're kind of getting the pulse there. And Thailand has recently started selling silver, actually, which is, Thailand is not normally big into silver. Some of the neighbors are, but not Thailand for some reason. But now, and I was asking gold people in Thailand before, why aren't you into silver? Because Thais are really smart with business. But anyway, they're getting into it now. Anyway, so we're in these stores yesterday, and then we see the attacks start there in Iran and whatnot, and those stores, all the gold stores in Thailand closed. It came on a notice, and then they started closing these. We were eating dinner, and two stores right by us started closing. So we got up and we started talking with them. They were putting signs in the windows. I put them on my X already, video of them closing the stores. It's funny because I put it on X, and then you get the people immediately, saying, "I live in Thailand. That's nonsense. That's not happening. They close at 5 anyway." You know how many times I've been through this? People, one guy's like, "You must be new to Thailand." I'm like, "Dude, I wrote the last 2 pages of the Prime Minister's book. I titled his book. I've been all over this country, man. It's north to south, every province, right? And I'm kind of dialed into Thailand, and so they didn't close because it was closing time. They closed because the Friday when the gold prices are steady over the weekends in Thailand. So today it was like, I think 77,600 baht per Thai baht per baht of gold, right? Anyway, not to go into, but anyway, the point is, so they keep the same price from the closing bell on Friday, the international markets, to the opening bell on Monday, right? So if there's a big event over the weekend and the price might be spiking right now, they don't want to sell their kilos of gold. Right?
Exactly.
They want to, so they closed everything down. And one lady, there was actually quite a few customers that were upset, but they were upset in the Thai way. They weren't screaming and huffing, but you could tell they were like, please, I need, and they weren't selling. And so that's it. The store's closed in front of us, and they put signs up, and I put, video of that on X right in front of us. So anyway, these effects are immediate. Now that seems like a minor effect, and it is, but other effects are you can see it's already rippling through the system. And I mean, the missiles are still in the air and they're closing the stores, right?
Right. So my question is then, in terms of gold and silver, we all expect gold to really spike on Monday probably, or, Sunday night when markets start to open, that is USA time Sunday night. And oil probably going to spike as well. It seems inevitable. But are you seeing any other signs aside from the store closure there? Because you talk to a lot of people, are you starting to get information about what might happen to gold and silver? I mean, the COMEX is already stressed in terms of silver deliveries for the month of March coming up. This could just add another crisis on top of an already bad situation.
Yeah, and as you know, the Mexico thing, we were actually helping people get out of Mexico with that. They had the Anarcho-Poco thing over in Puerto Vallarta, right? But that, Mexico is the biggest producer of silver. And so that was not a coincidence, right? That, this big thing going on, right? The things that you're talking about, COMEX and whatnot, and the timing and the silver deliveries and whatnot. And then mysteriously this thing happens in Mexico. I'm not sure if they're related, but they sure are mysterious timing, aren't they?
Yes.
The thing is we've got this big shiny thing on our southern border called Mexican silver, right? And people will absolutely go to war for that silver. There's been so many wars for silver and or gold, as you know. It's an endless number of wars that nobody can even count, and like the OK Canal was all about silver, So these things are amazing, and we're going to see wars over the silver. That's clear. Now, keep in mind Panama too, and Robert Friedland, the big fellow that's into mining. He's a very serious man. He's always talking about copper. If you see Robert Friedland talk, he's going to start talking about copper, right? And Panama's got a huge copper mine, not far from the canal, right? Yeah, I mean, it's in Panama. Nothing's far from the canal in Panama. And so there's a huge copper mine. There's all these different, things that people are lining up that they're going to be fighting for.
Okay. All right. So let's shift gears here and talk about, your three predictions about wars have always proved to be true, that wars grow unexpectedly, and they last longer than you think, right? Did I get that correct? Those are your three?
That's it. Yeah,
okay.
It's like cheating. It's like cheating because it's like predicting what a fire will do in a dry forest in hot days with high winds. It's like,
right.
Let me guess. It's going to grow. It's going to spread. It's going to go longer than you thought.
So there's a rumor right now that Trump is already trying to call for de-escalation. After some U.S. military installations took some pretty nasty hits. Apparently, at least that's what's being reported. Do you think that this is going to calm down tomorrow or over the weekend, or is this going to escalate over the weekend?
Trump doesn't control it anymore. The shots are fired right now. If they sense weakness from the United States, which they probably do with our aircraft carrier floating in its own sewage, apparently, and all sorts of other things, why would Iran and their partners stop when they can actually eject the U.S. Navy from the Persian Gulf, right? They might give the U.S. Navy free passage out of, whatever Navy ships are in the Persian Gulf, they could be trapped there. You're going to go through the Strait of Hormuz to get your Navy ships in and out of there. Nope. Good luck with that one. So we weren't able to stop the Houthis, and the Houthis are not nearly as powerful as Iran. And Iran has got direct support from China and Russia, and that includes intelligence, obviously. Look, you got three groups of highly intelligent people, Chinese, Russians, and Iranians, all of whom are quite tough, right? Israel has not been able to defeat the people in Gaza. I see the reports coming out of Gaza daily. They're still highly kinetic there. They're still doing airstrikes every day. I mean, like bombings, right? They're still doing drone strikes every day, sniper shots every day. The people in Gaza are still fighting the Israelis, even while the Israelis rob Americans blind of more hundreds of billions of dollars, right? So even after Gaza has been flattened, they're still fighting, right? What chance do they have against Iran and the Houthis and all these others who are way far flung, or Pakistan, right? Who has nuclear weapons? Now, you saw, recently, India and Israel are snuggling up closer and closer. Obviously, India would love to go for Pakistan and that sort of thing. And of course, because India's always got that thing going against China, and Pakistan, uses that port, Gwadar, right? That's the same port that we used in Afghanistan, by the way. United States forces used, or let's say our coalition forces used the port of Gwadar down there on the Indian Ocean to bring up supplies into Afghanistan, right? So right next to Gwadar is Chabahar, but Chabahar is in the on the Iranian side, right? So you got these two major ports right there. Chabahar, you're well aware of them, and Gwadar, not far from each other. These are two major ports that are going to have a big, key place in the future. Now, keep in mind, Israel wants to build the Ben Gurion Canal. They want to dominate the routes and resources in that region, but as the BRICS people build these other infrastructures, there's so many infrastructures, we could talk about it literally for days, right? And so, but in summary, there's a lot of BRICS infrastructure being built that will just bypass. So sanctions won't work because they're doing it by land. You can't block them from going through the Suez because they won't go through the Suez. They'll go over railways. They'll go through pipelines. There's not just seaways and railways. It's also pipelines, right? And so, this BRICS infrastructure, which is still going to take more decades to build up, but they're getting there. And this will eventually cut off the influence from, where's Halford McKinder when you need him? This would cut off a lot of the influence from a lot of the maritime powers, which would be the United States. But of course, our maritime power has reached its apogee. It appears we hardly make any ships anymore these days. Right. And when I look at our warships, which I see occasionally, they're rusty. I mean, our warships are rusty. You see the reports as well as our aircraft carrier filled, having sewage problems and the crews being very upset because they've been out deployed for so long on the boat, and meanwhile, they're being pushed up. We saw this happen in the Iraq War when the Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld, one of the Stryker units from Alaska, I think it was the 172nd Stryker Brigade. I was out with them actually. I think it was them. They were in Iraq. They were about to be redeployed back to the United States, back to Alaska, and Rumsfeld. They were literally some of the people had left Mosul and other parts of Iraq, and they were down in Kuwait, loading up their vehicles. And Rumsfeld's like, nope, back to the war. And the guys were like, what? We just made huge plans, all these. Keep in mind, the soldiers aren't rich, right? And suddenly, they got new babies and these sorts of things, and they just get jerked to go back into Iraq. And of course, Rumsfeld like, oh, basically you got to be tough. You're a soldier. Everybody gets it, but at the same time, it's a volunteer army, and it's not. Right. By that time, people could see we're not actually fighting for the defense of the United States, right? At that point, you can start to see, wait a minute, why are we even here, right? Yeah.
Let's talk about the USS Gerald R. Ford, since you brought it up there. Those sailors have been deployed something like 250 days or so. I don't know the exact number, or maybe it's 280 days. It's a long deployment. It's way more than the normal 6 months, right? And also that aircraft carrier, they just turned off their transponder. Apparently that's being reported, and it's parked off the coast of Israel, apparently to try to provide air cover to Israel. But already Iranian drones are striking targets inside Israel that are not being intercepted by the USS Gerald R. Ford, nor are they being intercepted by the Iron Dome interceptors, the Patriot missile interceptors and so on. it looks like right now Western anti-air defenses are utterly failing. I mean, even the fact that a major radar installation was taken out by Iran. What's up with U.S. air defenses?
Look, it looks like they're just landing punches, and the defense has just got its fist hanging by its side, limply by its side. I mean, they may end up sinking one of our aircraft carriers. They may end up at least damaging. It's not going to be difficult for these people with these advanced weapons and hypersonics to take out one of our ships or more, right? And put them on the bottom of the sea, or at least make them inoperable. And then how's the United States going to respond to that? Keep in mind, the combat radius of our aircraft is already, they're beyond the limits, right? You can't just do these deep strikes and whatnot because their missiles have a larger range than our combat radius of our F-35s and whatnot, right? This is not going to go well. Many of us have been, Matt Bracken screaming at the clouds every day about this for, 2-3 years, I mean, he's right, and you have as well. This is just not going to turn out well. Iran is a serious player with land routes, with land, they can be resupplied by land or by air, just going over Asia, right? They're not going to be put out of business unless you start dropping nuclear bombs on Iran, in which case we're probably going to get nuked instantly.
Well, talk to us more about that, because there has been speculation that Israel might use its relatively small yield nuclear munitions. I think maybe, well, when I say small, I guess there's nothing small in nuclear, but, maybe 20 kilotons or something like that. I'm not sure. Again, that's still larger than Hiroshima, right? So, but compared to other nuclear munitions today, like 1 megaton, it's still relatively small. Do you think that Israel is insane enough? Well, I guess the question answers itself. Of course, they're insane enough.
Yeah, the answer to that one.
Right.
Yeah, they're straight up. They're a danger to themselves and for others. And for years now, in the back of my mind, I rarely say it out loud unless I'm, around people that have watched this long enough. But I'll just say it out loud now. I mean, I just sense in me bones, you might say, that eventually Israel could attack the United States with nuclear weapons. I mean, they are that insane. There is nothing that a cult won't do, and I mean nothing. I've studied cults for years. I infiltrated and lived with a cult in California at one point. I learned that people will never see the cult that they're in, and there is absolutely, look, all these people doing death jabs to their babies and putting it on Instagram and that sort of thing. That's like Aztec baby sacrifice, right? That's cult stuff, right? Like the people in Bangladesh that would feed their babies to crocodiles to assuage the gods or whatever, right? I mean, that's the Zionists absolutely will do this. And keep in mind with them, with the Zionists, it's them against the world. They're against the entire world, including us. They don't respect Christians who support them. They hate the Christians who support them, right? They detest the Christians who support them. They detest the fools who send hundreds of billions, trillions of dollars to Israel. They detest them. They hate everybody. It's a cult. I'm talking about Zionists. I'm not talking about Jews. Jews and Zionists kill each other daily. They're in straight up war. Obviously, a lot of Zionists are Jews, but the ones who are the top leadership of the Zionists, they're atheists, right? And actually, the bulk of Zionists are Christians, right? Americans.
Right.
Excuse me. And so, but the point is it is a death cult. And some of the Christians want Armageddon to fulfill their prophecy, and some of the Zionists also want Armageddon. You got people from different angles that want Armageddon for different reasons, but they want to both arrive at, we're in a sea of fire.
Okay. Let me interrupt you here because I just got confirmation here. This is at least according to Netanyahu, so take it for what that's worth. But Netanyahu is claiming that their attack on Iran has killed the Ayatollah Khomeini. Khamenei, I think that's how you pronounce that. So he's a religious leader, right? So it's the equivalent of the Pope for Persia, you could say. This would be obviously a grossly illegal and provocative assassination of a person who is widely loved by, most of those, and in Iran and outside of Iran as well. This assassination, what's your take on what the reaction will be because of this alleged assassination?
Right. First, let's see if it's true, and how these things go.
Right.
And at the end of the day, even if they did, remember when they were killing all these Al Qaeda leaders, and the war kept going and kept going and kept going. People used to ask me all the time, "Oh, they just killed, the next Al Qaeda guy or whatever. Will that end the war?" I'm like, nope. It's like you killed King Mosquito, right? The mosquitoes aren't going to stop. You're provoking them. You're hitting them. You're still attacking them. You want to destroy. This is about destroying Iran. And a lot of the Iranians are sophisticated people. I mean, the Persians, I have never met a Persian that I wanted to go to war with. I mean, generally, they're very pleasant people, right? If you say something bad about Iran, they don't lose their mind and call you an anti-Iranite, right?
They're also very highly intelligent, typically.
Very intelligent. We can deal with Iranians, let's say Persians, right? I mean, by the way, Masako and I were up at a protest in, where was that? In Hamburg, I think it was, with recently with a bunch of Iranians. And then right close to that was a huge amount of Kurds that were protesting, thousands of Kurds, like, I don't know, let's say 3,000 or something. The Iranians, maybe 100 or 200. But we talked with the Iranians and the Kurds for quite a while. And but it was funny. These protests were happening near it was in Hamburg, right? And near the Hauptbahnhof, near the main train station in Hamburg. And so fascinating that, these things are erupting all over the place, coincidentally with the perfect signs and that sort of thing.
Okay, I hear everything you're saying there, but I still want to ask you, what if this assassination of the Ayatollah Khamenei is confirmed? What is likely to be Iran's retaliatory response or escalation based on how much the Ayatollah was beloved by his people?
My guess is they're going to keep launching missiles. I mean, because this is existential for Iran. I mean, if I were Iran, I would be launching everything, right? I mean, because this is existential. You want to push the United States out of that area. You want to push, you want to damage Israel to the point where they don't want to fight back. You're going to want the neighbors in the region not to want to have U.S. bases there because they get fire rained down on them as well, right? You want people to go, whoa, if we can't get respect, one way, then we're going to have to get it through fire and brimstone. I mean, that's what the United States and let's say the Zionist forces actually are doing now, because we just marched right on. We have no strategic plan. What is the strategic end state that we want for Iran? Regime change? And I mean, what does that mean, right? I mean, who you want to install? What do you want to install? They just want to genocide them. That's what this is about. The Zionists are a death cult, right? They don't necessarily have an end state except for, some will want to take control of the routes and resources and that sort of thing. There is another component in there that wants Armageddon, right? They want Armageddon. They want to provoke Armageddon.
The apocalypse end time zealots. They want it. They want the whole world to hate them because they think God's going to save them. But doesn't this action by Israel specifically make Netanyahu a fair game target for Iran?
He has been since day one. I mean, because they assassinate people all over the world, and they brag about it. They brag about it. I mean, they absolutely brag about it. He's a military target. I mean, anybody that does things like that is actually obviously a military. I mean, that they're way beyond all that part. And look at all the U.S. citizens who have dual citizenship. So let's call them Israeli citizens who have a U.S. passport. Apparently, I've read, I don't know how true it is, but about 12,000 Americans have fought for the IDF in the Gaza fight. I mean, that's a big deal. And there's no way, I don't know what the true numbers are, but let's just say it's some big number. Those names and IDs will leak one way or the other. Because keep in mind, this is a multiplayer game, a multiplayer intelligence game. We got the Chinese, we got the Russians, we got the French, we got the British, we got our guys. There's leakers within the U.S. government, obviously. The names of everybody is going to leak. There is no chance that it doesn't, right? They're going to know who you are. If you're fighting for the IDF, you will be known. There is no way to avoid it, right? And so how is that going to affect the rest of your life? How's that going to affect you when you want to travel somewhere in the future, especially if there's a big change of government in the United States? You may have no safe haven whatsoever, right?
Right.
You may have no safe haven in the United States. You may have no safe, and keep in mind, Highest Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society is, Zionist, is one of the groups that are trying to put the United States in the position where, weirdly, Jews and Zionists have no safe haven, and Christians have no safe haven in the United States or Europe, right? They are actually creating the conditions for their own demise. And it's really open. There's nothing hidden about it.
So that actually leads me to a question I wanted to ask you anyway, which is about the potential for pro-Iran forces that have entered the United States illegally, perhaps across the border, or maybe some of them with visas, who knows. But in your opinion, do you think there will be any domestic operations in the United States to try to, commit sabotage, hit oil refineries, or assassinate certain people? Are you concerned about any of those scenarios?
I mean, we've warned about it for years. Many people have. There was people warning about this since before we were born. There were people warning about this 100 years ago in regard to Germans and others, right? And so I mean, yeah, I mean, and it'll happen. I mean, it's not just Iranians, by the way. Many Iranians that clearly don't want to do this. They just want to live in Canada or the United States or whatever and have their family, right? I mean, that's what most of them will want to do. But then there'll be a component that doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, most people, we travel the world. Most people clearly they just want to raise their kids and make sure they go to good schools and and have a happy family. I mean, and Iranians are no different. They're sophisticated people, Persians, and they, but some obviously are going to defend, and they need to. The Zionists want to genocide them. They see the Persians as something that needs to be erased, just like they see us as something that needs to be erased. We are actually in the camp with the Persians, right? I mean, they want us dead. They're pushing the death jabs into us. The Zionists push the death jabs into us, and they're pushing missiles into Iran, right? And they're bleeding us to do it. So I mean, they're setting us to fight each other, and it's working. Keep in mind, while Chinese have come into the United States in huge numbers, which we've talked about many times, China has taken over. They're growing dope all over the place. I just got messages from a friend down in Texas, Taylor Kramer. He said they just opened some cannabis store like 200 meters away from where he lives, and they made it family friendly. He said they're all gave me all kinds of notes and voice. Yeah, I'm like, what's family friendly cannabis, right? I mean, Taylor's being facetious about it, because we've been all over the border together. We were down in Guatemala and all kinds of places, right? I mean, Panama. Taylor, he gets out there and gets it on. So I mean, he's like, look, they're opening these dope stores, right? And he said they have like a bowl full of joints on the tabletop counter, by the cash register, that sort of stuff. He just told me that today, right? We see this all over the world. These uses of cannabis is a major weapon system, right? Not just, let's say intoxicants, widen it out to intoxicants. And keep in mind the word assassin comes from hashin, right? From that region, like Persia, where they used to use hash to get to get people riled up to do assassinations, right? That's where the word assassin came from. Hash,
is that right?
No, yeah, it came from Persia, right? I mean, you can the etymology of that's where hash. And so, I mean, the idea that marijuana makes people peaceful, that is utterly nonsense. I've spent so much time with Israelis. I've never seen people smoke more dope than Israelis. They're like all Bob Marleys. That's why they go to India. I spent a lot of time with Israelis in India and Nepal and in Thailand. What do? They run out and they're smoking dope all the time. It's like cumulus clouds around them, right? They go to India specifically because it's cheap and they can get dope. They'll say it all the time. I traveled with them a lot. I stayed in their same guest houses years and years ago, right? They would just smoke their dope and they can be obviously very violent. The idea that, that the cannabis makes you peaceful. Anyway, that's not the point. The point is the intoxicants make people easy to brainwash. They make people and the Israelis are just as much a target of brainwashing, right? They are targeted, right? They actually are victims of the brainwashing. The people in the Zionist cult are actually I mean, they are humans like us. They're not evil per se. They're not evil in their core. They're not evil at the genetic level. They've been brainwashed just like a lot of Americans are brainwashed to do all kinds of different things, right? A lot of Americans are Zionists too. You know, by the way, you can be in multiple cults. There's not like some cults are exclusive.
One cult limit. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can be in one cult and in another cult, and they confuse together and all kinds of things. It's fascinating. I've studied this for years. But the point is that they also are targeted, right? They are not, again, they're not always the people doing bad to us. They have been targeted to do bad to us in service of something even bigger, right?
Okay.
And so the thing is they're, at the end of the day, they're our brothers and sisters too, but they've been infected with a cult, and you can't argue somebody, you know, if somebody has an actual virus where they're, you know, got, you know, some kind of disease, you can't argue that disease out of them, right? And well, you can't argue with a common cold and make it go away. And it's the same way with these cult viruses. You can't argue your way through it. You have to somehow cure it, right?
Okay. All right. So I follow all that you said, but I still want to bring you back to your analysis of what might happen domestically in the United States if this war continues to escalate, because there are resources, let's say, you know, Iranian or maybe Iraqi, you know, Syrian, Afghani people in the United States.
Zionist,
Okay,
hardcore.
Good
I mean,
point
they can
as
either
well.
do it
so
false flags
can there be false
just
flags? Yeah, exactly. Will there be bombings in America to be blamed on Iran? You know, what's your take?
Some people say 9/11 was that, right? And so not to blame Iran in 9/11, but they blamed all the enemies, right? And then what about the USS Liberty, right? Or October 7th? October 7th was a clear Israeli operation, over the top clear Israeli operation, and yet still people talk about it like it's just, you know, well, they killed all these people on October 7th, and therefore we had the genocide. You know, October 7th was a clear Israeli operation. I mean, I'm not sure how clear it can be. I mean, it took them 7 or 8 hours to respond. That's an entire McDonald's shift, right? So they're killing Israelis for 7 or 8 hours, right? If you called a fire department that took 7 or 8 hours to respond to the fire, you would burn down the fire department. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's like it should take minutes to be out the door, right? If the alarm goes off, it should be minutes to be out the door, max.
Yeah, absolutely. And what strikes me about all of this is that we already are, for example, the U.S. Eastern power grid is already maxed out, right? 100%. You cannot add data centers to it unless you bring more power online, and that affects 13 states. So if there were to be any nefarious forces, whether they be Zionist or Iranian or whoever, or even the government itself, who knows, that wanted to cause blackouts across like Virginia, that's not actually very difficult for someone to achieve if they were so motivated, right? I mean, we are quite vulnerable, especially our power grid, it seems. What are your comments on that?
Chinese could do it, as you know, and obviously Zionists could do it. Keep in mind, I keep going back to this one thing. It was the Zionist architecture that was pushing those death jabs and continues to do it, right? So there's no way to get around that. That's a big mountain in the middle of the road, right? So any idea that they're on our side and still death jabbing us is out the window, right? They're not on our side. They are parasitoids, right? That's what's happening. And so they might do it. Who might? They obviously want to depopulate us. I'm talking about the Zionists, right? And the Chinese would love to depopulate us as well, right? So, but keep in mind, the Zionists and the Chinese also fight each other. So it's not like that friend of my friend is my, or, you know, the whole enemy thing, you know this thing. But at the end of the day, the Zionists and the Chinese fight each other, and they both want to get rid of us, right?
Right.
And I'm not talking about all Chinese, of course. I'm talking about Chinese Communist Party, right? They clearly want to get rid of us. They're clearly as racially superior. The Chinese Communist Party are racial supremacists, just like the Zionists. The Zionists are hardcore racial supremacists, right? They are the biggest racists on planet Earth, or somewhere gold and silver is Chinese Communist Party and Zionists.
You've said this before, that the key conflict for the future of our world is Chinese versus Zionist.
Clear. It's clear. And they are fighting each other on a level that most people don't even comprehend, and they don't even sense that it's happening, even though it's happening right in front of them, really nakedly right in front of, again, death jabs. Who did that? That wasn't China. That was not Iran. Iran did not do that. That was not a bunch of Muslims who did that. The Muslims did not push the death jabs on us, right? It wasn't Buddhist. It wasn't Jains. It wasn't
That was our own
Sikhs.
government. Yeah.
It was. And it was coming, a lot of it was coming from that Zionist architecture. Clear, obvious, right? Trump.
Yeah.
Trump is a hardcore Zionist. He's a very obvious Zionist.
And Operation Warp Speed. So Trump used the military. And of course, the DOD ran the original research on SARS-CoV-2, which was then laundered through Wuhan for the gain of function editions. And then some derivatives of that were slipped into the jabs that were distributed by the military. So that was a military operation against the American people.
Right. And hardcore. I mean, it was a very hardcore military operation by our own military, right? But which is captured. Again, there are many. Who is doing these airstrikes on America's behalf? How many of those are Israelis or Israeli citizens or dual citizens or whatever? Our military is not like, there's this idea that our military is something that it's actually not. It's a huge blend of people, right? Our intelligence agencies, I had some knockdown, drag out discussion last week with several Zionists on this private call, and one of them threatened overtly to contact his friends in the Department of Homeland Security to come after me. I put it on X. It's pinned at the top of my X right now.
I saw that.
Yeah. I mean, that guy threatened me overtly in clear terms. He'll have his people from the Department of Homeland Security come look into me, right? That's a hardcore Zionist right there. And he put it in writing. He's either that stupid, which many of them are, I've noticed actually. Many of them are a combination of they're not as brilliant as they make themselves out to be, and they're arrogant. So when you mix those two things together, that supreme arrogance and that supreme sense of entitlement and the supreme sense of victimhood, all professional victims are predators. And that goes on a personal level all the way up to cultural level, tribal level, national level. When you see like Chinese Communist Party, they always play professional victims. Zionists always play professional victims. That's how they then have reason to do anything that they want to do, because it's us against the world. Everybody's mean to us. Everybody hates us. Everybody's trying to steal from us. Therefore, it's not stealing when we go for them. We're just evening up the score, right? That's how they keep that. That's how they keep those structures together.
Right. Okay. So let me shift gears here with you again. Let's talk about the political fallout of this, because if the Strait of Hormuz stays closed and the Suez is unusable, supply chains begin to crater, inflation kicks in because of the higher cost of transportation impacting, let's say, groceries and food, etc., everything. What do you think the fallout's going to be for the midterm elections, the GOP and the Trump administration in particular, or shall I say the Epstein administration at this point? What do you think?
Yeah, the Epstein administration, like in Texas, which is obviously one of the most important little places on planet Earth, is Texas, right? Look, Abbott has been endorsed by Trump now, 4 times? I think 3 times in writing, and then Trump just came down to Texas. And meanwhile, Doc Chambers is running for governor and getting a huge groundswell. And but what does this mean for politics? I mean, do we trust even the voting? I don't actually. I mean, unfortunately. And so I don't know what to think of it at that point, because if you don't trust the actual voting mechanisms, then what can you trust? But it is true that Trump has come down to Texas and he endorsed Huffines, right? Again, who his family bought that Epstein ranch in New Mexico. What's up with that? You know what I mean? I mean, it's the whole Epstein ecosystem here. Trump, and it's interesting. How many people will give Trump a pass on Epstein? They'll give him a pass on anything. Like Trump said years ago, he could just shoot somebody in the street and you just walk away from it and get away from it. Yeah, they've got the cult going.
Yeah, okay. So, but there are also a lot of people turning on Trump right now. So he's plummeting in the polls even before this new war, kicked off. I think his support numbers are now maybe 30% or something like that, and that's going to continue to plummet. But isn't it clear that the demise of the popularity of Trump and the collapse of MAGA, the pro-peace ticket has collapsed, that this is actually going to be catastrophic for the GOP in the House and Senate, both coming up. And that means that if, the House is a pretty thin majority right now, doesn't that mean that next year Trump's going to be facing an endless parade of impeachments?
See, isn't that a perfect strike on a core of the conservative Americans? Trump came in, packaged up the conservative Americans, and then split them. I mean, that's what those narcissists do. They do what's called splitting. Psychologists call it splitting, and it happens on personal levels, and it happens on larger levels, like cultural levels. You can see in this political sense, they pulled all the MAGA people together, which if I were going to, call myself anything, it would be like MAGA in a sense, like I'm very conservative, right? I believe in family. I believe in, the whole, picket fence idea of America. That's the America that I want, right? That's the America that I yearn for. He pulled that yearning in together and threw gas on it, right? And now you've got a lot. And again, the days that I've supported Trump remain at zero, right? You can see yourself and you can see your opposite in people, right? When Newt Gingrich called me years ago before the first election, and he was trying to get, that was when I was at my office in Chiang Mai, Thailand, actually. He got my number somehow. So Newt Gingrich called me up. He's trying to get support for Trump. And I'm like, you got to have somebody better than that guy. I mean, I'm not going to vote for Clinton. There's no chance, right? But at the end of the day, I don't trust him. I don't trust Trump. There's got to be somebody better, right? And it's only gotten worse since then. Actually, I think by this point in my career, I have earned one thing. People should at least, when I say I don't like Abbott, I was against Abbott long before the election. I could see right through him. That guy is our enemy, right? I could see through Trump. I've been right over and over and over without exception. Actually, I've been able to read those people without exception. I've turned out right. So in the future, when I say that guy's not good, I'm more able to spot the ones who are not good than the ones who are good. It's easier to spot not good than it is to spot good. Good, the only way you can spot good is if it's under high stress. So you have to have a high stress environment to really, no kidding, do the litmus test on good. But the assay, you might say. But when it comes to bad, it can pop right off the page. And Trump is that guy. And he's evil. I mean, he's a Zionist. He's destroying our military. He's destroying our country. There's no plan for this war in Iran unless it is to destroy the United States, right? It's literally setting us up for destruction. We could literally end up with aircraft carriers on the bottom of the sea. I don't know if it's going to happen. Even if you just put a missile through the flight deck on one, it's out of action. Those things are kind of hard to sink, but you can sink them, obviously. But the point is that they're not invincible. They're invincible when you're going against somebody who lives out in a little village, and their idea of surface-to-air missiles is a bow and arrow. But now we've got people with hypersonic missiles and targeting. It doesn't matter if the Ford turns off its transponder. We got Chinese and Russians out there, man. We got the Turkish. We got fishing boats all over the place. There's no way that aircraft carrier is hiding out there. There's zero chance it's going to hide out on the open seas against Chinese, Russians, Turkish people with fishing boats, yachts, everything else. There is no chance that aircraft carrier is hiding out there. If they want to target it, they're going to hit it, right? And so that's what it comes down to. And they want, obviously, to widen the war with Turkey. And obviously the Turks, picking on the Turks is not a good idea. But the Turks are right there on the Bosphorus, right? They got the Turkish Straits. So if you can control the Turkish Straits and you can control the Danish Straits, where we were just at, actually, and you can control the Suez Canal and the Bab el-Mandeb and the Strait of Hormuz, and the Panama Canal. This is massive, right? This is massive. But they're not going to, because they're insane. They're not as intelligent as they're made out to be. The Zionists are not. They're insane. You can see that by their actions. They're clever. They're very clever. They're clever enough to do a lot of. It doesn't take as much ability to be an arsonist as it does to be an architect.
It's so true.
One arsonist can outwork 1,000 architects, right? There are social arsonists arsonist. I noticed that with Al Qaeda. Al Qaeda was very good, let's say in Iraq, with taking towns. They could take like Bakuba or whatever, they'd take it over. They did. I was there, right? And then they couldn't run it. They couldn't keep the water going. Any veterans that were there at the time, like Operation Arrowhead Ripper and all that, I was there. I was in Bakuba a lot. Between 2005, 6, 7, I think 8 as well. But anyway, but the point is Al Qaeda took it for a spell, made everybody hate them, just like everybody now hates Zionists, and they couldn't keep the water on, couldn't keep the electricity on, and so we beat them. And they beat themselves, actually, is more accurate, right? They did this over and over and over, and they created a lot of hatred, and then they didn't have water for the fish to swim in, let's say, if Mao were around. Like, the Zionists don't have any safe haven except in the minds of people like Trump and an increasingly smaller and smaller group of Americans. And they know that.
On that point, what do you make of the idea that Netanyahu has a sense of urgency here? Because this is seen as their last chance. The Zionists are absolutely losing support from the American people by far. A recent poll showed, for example, more Americans are now sympathetic to the Palestinians than they are to the Israelis. And secondly, the only people, frankly, that are still supporting Zionism are I'll probably get some hate for this, but it's the Christian boomers raised on the Schofield Bible who were gaslit for, since they were kids in Bible school, frankly. Nobody else.
Me. Right, me. Me. Yeah. I was raised, to support Israel. I was raised going to church to support Israel, right? And I did for years, right? For years. I went to the Church of the Nazarene, and it's a great church, by the way. Very conservative, not crazy, not any kind of nutty stuff or anything like that. They were more about individual spiritualism, actually. And that's why I think, on the mice, money, ideology, coercion, and ego, I'm very, the spiritual has to be internal, right? It has to be your direct connection with God, right? And without interlopers, right? But there was support for Israel. It wasn't radical Zionist or anything like that, but it was, it was support for God's children. And so for years and years and years, that's what I thought. And then I believed, when I was young, I believed we got to defend Israel. They're the greatest ally in the Middle East, and yada, 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 right? And then as time went on, I'm like, wait a minute, things are not adding up here. What is this USS Liberty thing? And so many different things started adding up. It took a long time. And then a big change for me came to when I actually went to Israel. That was actually a phase change. I didn't become anti-Israel yet or anything like that, but I was getting there. I went to neutral, actually. And so finally I went from very supportive to neutral to, then it came for the jab. When they did the jab, I'm like, I'm out. I'm totally out. And then it got, as time has come and things have gotten worse, you see them in a higher state of energy. I can see the evilness coming out of that Zionist architecture. And now I understand more how it was formed, things I didn't understand when I was younger. I didn't understand that the Zionists were formed largely by British intelligence, actually. And I didn't realize that how this all came about. It didn't come about with, God's children going back to their promised land. It came from taking control of the Suez Canal. That's why Israel is there. Same reason Panama was formed in 1903. We formed Panama in 1903 because we wanted to build the Panama Canal, which we opened in 1914. That's exactly why Panama was formed. And the reason why Israel was formed was because after the Suez was opened in 1869, the British had lost control of the Suez Canal. They were afraid Egypt would take it, and they did, right? So they used demographic warfare and brainwashed a lot of people to come over to Israel to say, hey, you can get some free land, which is what they did with the Dawes rolls in America with, Cherokee and whatnot. That's a whole different story. It's fascinating, but it was the same time frame and the same sort of mechanisms. You say, hey, you're this people, you can get some land, and everybody owes you that land. Just go take it, right? And that's what happened. So you had people flooding in from Poland and Lithuania and Russia and everywhere else down to Israel going, yeah, I know we're white, but we're Semites. That word became, very useful as time went on. And that was all about demographic and information war to take that area over and to take control its routes and resources. And the ideology was used to take the human resources to make that your army, your army that you don't even have to pay, right? to help you clean those people off, the other people off the land. That's what's happened.
Okay, but have we now, or has the West run into something, a barrier they cannot overcome? Because Iran is not a pushover. Iran is not going to be able to be, conquered like Syria. Iran is much stronger than Lebanon, etc. On and on. Iran is much more advanced than Egypt. Iran also has all this help from China and Russia, reportedly, with all kinds of anti-stealth radar systems, etc. Do you think that? Well, I guess I'm asking you for your opinion of the outcome of this conflict. What's it look like a month from now?
More or less, what's it going to look like? More like as years unfold, because a month from now is harder. It's easier to kind of see that we set the stage. We put more energy in the system for them to build up bricks. Like sometimes these different parts of the brick systems, they're having a hard time raising money for the railway here or whatever there. You know what I mean? Now there's more and more energy. Like, we have to build all this now, right? Because the United States Zionist forces are trying to kill us collectively, Russia, China, Iran, because there's different parts of the Zionist architecture, but again, some do want the end of times, and there's others that want to just be rulers of the world, right? And so, how does this look in the long term? In the long term, we're adding fuel to the fire. We're flaming the idea and the energy for the Russians and everybody else to, the Shanghai organizations, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the SCO, which is like I would say in the past, the enemy NATO, right? They are going to be stronger and, more, they're going to be cooperating more closely. It gives them more reason to have their own, say, gold standards and that sort of thing. They are building their own system now. We're giving them reason to do this more so now than ever, because look what we've done. We've weaponized everything. We took Russia's money. When I was just Masako and I were just in the airport in Copenhagen, there were Ukrainian flags all over that airport in Copenhagen and Denmark. There must have, I don't know how many, we probably saw a good 50, right? They're everywhere. Ukrainian flags in the Copenhagen airport. They're just draining Scandinavia and Europe dry for their tax money, and it vanishes somewhere, right? And meanwhile, you look over at Netherlands now, they're looking at, putting capital gains on unrealized capital gains, or looking at taxing unrealized capital gains. You talked about, you messaged me the other day. This is suicide, as you know, right? Europe is committing suicide as well. And it's fascinating to watch this. People that you would think are highly intelligent are not just talking about it. They're probably going to start taxing unrealized capital gains.
That's what we call unrealized national suicide.
I forgot what message you sent the other day on that, but I was like, you were just like, you were mentioning, look at what Netherlands is doing, taxing unrealized capital gains. You can't make up this stuff, right?
Yeah,
that's like protesting gravity by jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge, right?
Right.
It's like
pretty much gravity wins. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So look, a couple of things. We're about to wrap this up, and I appreciate you spending all this time with me. But first of all, I want to invite you to mention your channels. You have your Substack and X and whatever else you want to mention. Do you want to go ahead with that?
Right. I'm on X, and I go there almost daily, and on Substack. Substack is where I put the more major stuff. And like our recent interview that Masako and I did with Catherine Austin Fitts was very popular, and it's still picking up a lot of steam. So Catherine Austin Fitts and Masako and I, my wife, we stayed with Catherine Austin Fitts for more than a month in Netherlands. And finally, we did an interview. It's fascinating. It's on my Substack.
Yeah, and by the way, I've always been so impressed with Catherine's knowledge and her courage to tell the truth. What's your impression after spending so much time with her?
She's brilliant. We would do morning walks together and talk together, and we spent a lot of time together. And she was just on that Tucker Carlson interview, and she mentioned we went to that the stallion show of the Frisian horses, which was fascinating itself too. But we spent a lot of time with her, and then I got to know her Solari team. Her Solari team, because she has the Solari report. The Solari team, every one of them was high quality people, like super people, super smart, right? And they study hard. And anyway, the Solari report is worth reading, by the way. And that's Catherine Austin Fitts. That's I'm plugging Catherine Austin Fitts because I've learned a lot from her in that month. Or I spent more than a month with her. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That would be the ultimate party, is hanging out with you and Masako and Catherine Austin Fitts and myself. We would. Can you imagine what the topics would be?
Oh man, we'd just get the maps out on the table and invite some serious people in as well, and just like spend a whole weekend together, right? Not like a evening, but like a whole few days.
I know it would really
set up the cameras. For some of it would be off camera, obviously. And then other parts we could, because, there's things that you want to talk about that you can't talk about everything on camera, but you can summarize it and talk about things on camera. But getting together, this is one of the things when I was with Catherine, we invited people in. For instance, we invited a naval intel, Jim Fennell, in from Switzerland. He came in. Jim is a good guy. He'd be a great guy to have on your show, actually. He's a retired naval intel officer from the Pacific Fleet. Anyway, he's a serious man. We invited him in. Then, we just invited different people in, spread out the maps and talk for long periods of time. There's a lot of value in doing that. And just pulling people in for like a weekend and putting the maps out. Right.
Absolutely. Okay. Is there anything else you want to add before we wrap this up? I don't know, maybe a final thought on what people should do to prepare for the big changes that have just been unleashed.
Right. Well, it's not the end of the world. All of our families, again, I say this over and over, everybody watching this, we all came from families that have been in a lot of war. You know what I mean? A lot of war and a lot of famine and a lot of all kinds of stuff. And we're still here, right? And so, but the people who adapt quickly, who recognize, like you've got to be brutal in your assessments, not sentimental. The people that recognize and make adjustments quickly, they tend to do fine, actually. And so be that person. And right now, I would prepare for, at a minimum, higher food prices, and they'll happen very quickly, I think. So I would prepare for that. And obviously, sooner or later, things will probably get a lot more serious. Our borders have been open. Trump is a Zionist, and the Zionists clearly are destroying the United States. They're destroying the United States, along with China, actually.
That reminds me, it's almost like the USS Gerald R. Ford was put there as bait, because sinking it is now within reach of Iran, clearly. And if the goal were to destroy much of the U.S. Navy, this would be the way to do it.
Yeah, I would not doubt, and I see people saying this publicly, I would not doubt if the IDF or somebody puts a missile into one of our aircraft carriers. I wouldn't doubt it. They did it to the USS Liberty, right? People say, that's insane. You can't say that. You're anti-Semite. And I'm like, I don't know. Zionist isn't Semite. Most of them are atheists, by the way, or the top leadership. They did it with the USS Liberty, right?
Clearly, yeah.
October
1967.
7th, October 7th, they did it, right? They absolutely 100% will do it. A lot of people think that 9/11 was from them, and there's a lot of evidence pointing that direction. But clearly, they did the USS Liberty, and clearly, they did October 7th. And what about that Marine barracks bombing in 1983? Who was behind that? Was it really Hezbollah? How do we know that? Israel does this stuff that's like morning breakfast for them to do false flags, right? This is normal business for them.
Yeah, exploding pagers and all that too.
Yeah, there's nothing at all. I would not doubt that we're going to wake up and there's some, our aircraft carrier is on fire and, thousands of people are dead, right? And because they're going to want Americans to overreact, which is not hard with Trump. He's really not that smart. It's not that hard for him. He'll do anything. He has no moral compass whatsoever. His moral compass spins like a fan, right? And he'll do it. He would absolutely use nuclear weapons on Iran. Israel would do it. Eventually, again, in the back of my mind, I see a future Israel that would nuke the United States. I can just feel it in my bones. You can sense it based on different things. And
wait a minute. Just to be clear, you said you could see a future where Israel nukes the United States.
Absolutely. I've been thinking about this for years.
Okay, go ahead.
Blames it on somebody else. A lot of people have thought about this, actually. I'm not the only one. I could easily see where that could happen. And because they want to kick off some subcomponent wants to kick off the end times. Nuking the United States we would see our weapons start to fly, right? And which would get return fire, right? The Russians are nothing to be trifled with. Even if we destroyed Russia, their nuclear submarines are out there, right? Obviously, all the power would be out, the satellites would be out, and all that sort of thing, and it would be the depopulation event would be fully underway on a mass scale. I would not doubt that. There's people that have talked about it for years with Israel. They show, let's say the Zionists, right? They clearly show those sorts of, let's say they're like a global scale school shooter, right? There is nothing they won't do. There is nothing that a cult will not do. Listen, they deployed the death jab, right? That has killed millions of people. Why would they not kill millions more? They're clearly trying to kill as many as they can, right? And it's not just limited to Hamas or Hezbollah. It's just not. They're trying to kill as many. Trump encouraged MAGA to take the jab. Now, some of the lower IQ people will say, well, he gave us ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. What do you mean he gave us? Who is this guy that gives us stuff? And if he's pushing you in that direction, maybe it's a good idea not to take those either, right? Because at the end of the day, he's also pushing cannabis. He wants cannabis to be legal in the United States. He's doing everything that somebody would do if they wanted to destroy that base. You would infiltrate with a wolf, like a Fabian, like a wolf wearing a sheep's skin, right? That's what he's done. He's come in, acted like MAGA because he is an actor. He had a TV show. He came in acting like big MAGA guy. He was an acting role, like Bondi. They're all actors and actresses, and now some of the MAGA is waking up, but a lot are not waking up because they're dead. Because they took the jab and they're actually physically dead now, right? Look at Scott Adams, the fool, right? Who was pushing the jab, saying how smart he was, and he blocked me, actually, and now he's dead, right? And at the end of the day, he was actually pushing the jab hard, right? And then he was, begging Elon and Trump for this other medicine. He was still in that ecosystem and always explaining how good he is at, watching mind manipulate. He was mind manipulated. He was smoking cannabis all the time. He talked about it, right?
Really?
He was and Scott Adams was, he would talk about the smoking the dope, right? I'm like, you're on dope. You're on dope telling me how smart you are. I won't be persuaded by a dope smoker that they're brilliant. I just won't, because it doesn't work like that.
Wow. Okay. Well, there's so much that you've covered here today. Obviously, our audience needs to be very cautious about where things are going, and protect your assets, protect your health, protect your supply chains, etc. I hope you can join me again, Michael, as we watch this situation unfold. Obviously, I hope it de-escalates, but that seems unlikely based on your 3 rules of war. It's not going to de-escalate anytime soon. So. Any final words or?
No, I think at this point it probably will not de-escalate. If it were going to do it, it'll do it very soon. But the longer it drags out, the less anybody has control to stop it. Because at some point, especially if they sense that they can knock the U.S. Navy out of there and both demoralize and show to the world that the United States is not that powerful anymore, we'll lose partners all over the place. Because everybody will notice if the U.S. Navy either gets sunk in the Gulf or other places, or they just run, or they destroy a bunch of our F-35s and F-22s and whatnot on runways somewhere, or shoot them down. It's going to make the world look very different. People will start siding with Russia and China more.
Okay. And BRICS, what about BRICS? Does this war strengthen BRICS ultimately? Does it accelerate the move away from U.S. dollar currency dependence?
Oh, definitely. Now, it may damage bricks in the very short term, but I think in the long term, this is, if you want to build bricks, this is how you do it right here. This is a building bricks to build bricks.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Michael Yon. Thank you for taking the time and for your analysis. And I want to encourage our audience to check out your Substack, and your X handle is Michael_Yon. And share this video and catch other video interviews at brightvideos.com, where I'm posting all my interviews. And thank you so much, Michael, for your time today. We appreciate you very much.
Thank you, Michael.
All right. Stand by. Don't hang up yet.
Okay.
Don't disconnect. All right. Thanks, folks, for listening.
Stock up on the long-term storable Ranger Bucket Set. 536 servings of clean organic superfoods for your survival pantry. Certified organic and lab tested for purity. Order now at healthrangerstore.com.